One of the things that people fail to realize when they make, the entrepreneurial leap is that it is not this beautiful, picturesque experience the whole time. And there will be challenges, and you've got to pick yourself up and you've got to learn from your mistakes and make good decisions.
All right, folks, welcome to the call, High Voltage Business Builders with your host, Neil Twoff. I've got here with me somebody who I've found very quickly to have like-minded spirit and mind, and just topics and conversations over a short period of time have really resonated with this gentleman. So I'm excited to have him here today to talk about business growth, scaling, mergers, acquisitions, everything e-commerce. So if you're wanting to learn about e-com growth and business, if you want to learn about scale, that's what we're going to talk about today, as it has related to business. And my good friend and brother from an Israeli mother, Yoni Kozminski. Am I saying that correctly?
You're nailing it, and what a compliment.
Everybody gets my name wrong, so I should have asked you correctly before I ventured out into that bridge. But it looks like it's going to hold water. So thanks for joining me today.
Thanks for having me. And like I was saying, mate, massive compliment. I feel the same way about you, like-minded, and yeah, just absolutely hit like a flash in the pan instantly. Was just hooked. So thanks for having me.
I love it. It doesn't happen very often. I was telling my daughters about this the other day because I'm teaching an intro to entrepreneurship course for the local homeschooling. And one of the things we were talking about was the offer, how to create that, irresistible offer that gets somebody's attention and really makes them go, wow, and then makes them feel stupid for saying no. And so we were talking about the relationships, and I know you know this, and we're going to dig into this a bit, but it really had to do with how fast someone is attracted to your person and will establish the foundations of a know, like, and trust process with you, even if they don't acknowledge that's what they're doing. And it takes 30 seconds or less for that to occur. And what's fascinating is in the technical age that we live in, how quickly the, percentage of your body, conversation, and actual message resonate with the other person, just having that first 30 seconds on a Zoom call when you've never met them. How do you experience that in business yourself and being a business builder and developer? What do you think about all that? Where does that resonate with you or not?
I mean, yeah, it just strikes a massive chord. I think that so much of everything that we're doing in business, we talk about building businesses and scale, and, you let in with M&A and all the topics that we're talking about, but ultimately at its core, it's all about people. It's all about the relationships that you foster with people. And if you only get one thing right, it's that. And so for me, I'm always looking at it from the lens of like, how do I add value? How do I show up with my true authentic self? And how do I come in here without an objective, without trying to get something from someone, or, it's leading with, effectively like the gift of giving without the expectation of reciprocation is how I like to really live my life.
So with the world of deepfakes, AI, the ability to now script your language, I was playing with 11labs.io, if you're familiar with that one at all.
Yep.
And I went in and gave it my 10-minute drill speech, and then came back and started playing the audios and adjusting the voice and stuff. And I'm like, oh my gosh, this is too good. Actually, it's too good. It's dangerously good. Where does that fit into the next level of business and development and product development and brand development? How does that fit? How does AI fit in your world?
Yeah, well, I would say from that lens, it's kind of terrifying, isn't it? To see that people can just, especially like guys like you and me who have loads and loads of online recordings and content and podcasts, like you are so easy to emulate from every aspect of you. So it's kind of terrifying from that regard. Like I think about like my grandmother who will get scammed by any scammer that calls her up and asks for a credit card, in this current environment with what they grew up in. But like, geez, it is it's kind of a scary outlook from that regard. But from the other lens, in terms of my world and how it fits in, I mean, I've always been a huge believer. Like I came from creative advertising and very creative led environments. And so seeing something like ChatGPT explode onto the scene and seeing it be able to articulate definitely much better than me, but I'd say even better than a lot of like content creators and writers, and coming up with these plots and stories and movies and things that are just so far beyond like what the average person can achieve. It is just, it's going to fundamentally shift. I would say it'll fundamentally shift the way in which the entire world operates. Yeah.
The next level of internet, if you will. And you're right, we have so much content online that it's not too hard to take an audio and break it all out and then upload it to 11 Labs and have it say anything you want. There was just a recent scam, I think, about a $40 million bust, if I remember correctly, for a guy who did that, who literally took a version of a voice and did a social engineering hack. We think in the Matrix, we think in terms of like, wow, that's great engineering and supercomputer technology. And it's like, no, it's just social engineering. at its worst. But at its best, it's development of relationships, it's opportunities for creativity, and it's a new platform of learning and development, I think, that we're going to have to get ahead of. How are you applying that to your model of business, and where do you see it going for you?
Yeah, so I've got a few different businesses. The one that's actually been a focus of ours in terms of how we're applying it is we have a platform that we're building in the background for our staffing company. And one of the things we're doing to create a better experience is an integration with ChatGPT and how we can build out things like job descriptions more effectively for the people we're trying to serve so that we can help them understand who do I need versus just coming in and doing a bit of a Google search and pulling something off of Indeed or Monster or things like that. So really trying to dig deep into how we can leverage it to create clarity and help people that will ultimately lead to us doing a better job in that business.
So how did you get into this? Like, let's backpedal for just a second, and I want to keep digging into those topics a little bit more. Before we do, let's unpack you a little bit. Where did you are you a product of a trust fund? Where's your dad, a tech guru, a billionaire, or were you on the mean streets of life, living in your car, whatever it was? Like, where did how did you get to be where you are with multiple companies and so much business under your belt?
Yeah, it's a great question. Well, I would say, I had a very solid upbringing. I fortunately didn't have to ever worry about where I slept or what I had to eat and if there was going to be food on the table. Like, I grew up in Melbourne, Australia, and had a really solid life and education and all of that. But I would say, like, in terms of where I sit in my experience, like, I left Australia when I was 27. I had grown up in digital marketing, creative advertising, found a job in Los Angeles, worked at a creative ad agency over there for 3 years. And since coming to Israel about 6 years ago now, everything I've done has been bootstrapped. There's been no handouts, none of that. It's really just been hard work and, I'd say just a level of commitment to the cause and belief that, if we put in the reps and if I find the right people and I engage with and partner with the right people, that we can achieve some pretty big things. So yeah, no funding yet. I honestly think as a topic and, venture capital in and of itself is a whole interesting equation. I think that it can often turn some of the potentially world's best founders into absolute has-beens before they ever had a chance to be, because they're trying to
vulture capital for a reason, right?
Vulture capital. I love it. Yeah. That trying to force a result. So, while things are slower going through this bootstrapped environment and trying to build and trying to manage multiple businesses concurrently, I'd say that, I'm learning often costly lessons and mistakes, but nothing that's going to have me come undone and say, really question, can I achieve this? Am I doing the right things?
Yeah. What was the first one you got started? What first business did you jump into? And was it a success, or is it kind of a failure, or was it a learning curve, or what was it for you?
So I'd say my first, in terms of stepping into entrepreneurship, as I left the safety net of my 6-figure job, was, I would say, somewhat of a failure. I was doing a bit of drop shipping work, and at the same time, I really wanted to get into e-commerce more heavily. And I made some fundamental mistakes. I bought a domain justforlads.com. I'm from Australia. English people will also go with a domain like that. And I really wanted to do something like cool material. I don't know if you're familiar with the website. It's curation of wallets and, just really cool stuff for men. I was like, I can do that. I love the website. I love that stuff. Anyway, I ended up getting banned from Facebook, where I'd historically spent 20 million plus on Facebook media, because one of the products I was listing was knives, and you can't have knives on your website. And so that was a bit of a bust, to be honest with you.
They may allow it now because they're hurting pretty bad. So they might want your ad spent now. They didn't want it before.
Well, I don't know if you've ever had to deal with Facebook customer support and trying to deal with those things. Yeah.
I've gotten shut down before. Yeah. Cool. We got a multi-million-dollar account shut for something I didn't even do.
It's a black hole.
Of course I didn't do it. I'm not guilty. No one in prison is guilty, of course.
Of course not. Of course not. So I'd say, that was a failure. But then I quickly spun off into building an agency, because I'd done that for so many years. And that was financially really successful. Probably 3 months in, I was doing about $20,000 in monthly recurring revenue. And 6 months into that, I just realized I hated it. I hated what I was doing, and then ended up giving that up to join another business and take a massive risk.
And what was the massive risk in the other business you jumped into?
Well, I went from making about $20,000 a month in, recurring revenue in this agency that I was building to a potential equity play into an e-commerce
I see.
business where I was getting paid $0.
So your risk was upside potential. It wasn't actually I mean, you risked the revenue, but you are obviously banking on what? Quick turnaround, 3 months, you would have double, triple that income. Was that kind of the thought there?
It was actually the longer term play. It was that
Okay.
3 months in, I would start getting a salary that was at least livable. And then on the
Okay.
back of that, build toward owning a significant chunk of equity and exiting that business.
Okay. But you're talking about it in the past tense, if I'm not mistaken.
Correct. Yeah. This is going back 4 or 5 years ago now.
Okay. But it's a stepping stone in your journey, is it not?
Critical. I would never have gotten into the Amazon space and e-commerce space if it wasn't for that learning experience. And, I think one of the fundamental things that I learned in that journey is that I'm not a solopreneur. I need to be with like-minded people. I want other people to have skin in the game like I do because, I think one of the big realizations for me is I'm not good at everything. I'm actually bad at most things. There's a handful of things that I can add a tremendous amount of value to. And if I can focus on those things, I can have, we're talking about 1 + 1 makes, 300, not even three
Yeah.
here. If you can really just move away from the things that are not in your core skill sets and you can find the right person who has that level of skin in the game as you do.
Well, it's a common theme that I hear that entrepreneurs who actually have made something sustainable, moved past that entrepreneurial stage, as we like to define it as the test and, the rest, test, and failure methodology of everything you're trying to figure out what you're good at and not good at, to actually a business wisdom and maturity, usually built off the back of something very destructive, a major
Yep.
failure, to help define you through fire, if you will, into what you're actually good at and things you should not be focused on. And it sounds like you've walked a very similar process to a lot of interviews I've discussed, and even my own story of just being, in that super failure moment and realizing, okay, what is it I'm actually good at? What was the core strengths that you came out of there that have really helped accelerate your success to date?
I would say there's a couple of things, but I think the thing that I'm one of the best, at least from the people that I've come in contact with or what I'm doing, is I feel that I have a really strong ability to understand where people fit into an environment or into an operation, often more so than they understand. So just a really deep understanding of how, not to look at it as a chessboard, but I've been playing a lot of chess lately. So it's just on my mind. But, being able to move the pieces into the right place and have them actually realize their potential has been something, exponentially, just it's had an exponential upside on what that's meant both for the individuals that I'm working with and then
Yeah.
also from the business as a whole.
Yeah. Well, that's tremendous because it's tough to realize the things you're not good at and acknowledge that it's okay to not be good at it without feeling like a failure or letting it eat away your mindset. Am I wrong?
For sure, for sure. And I'd be lying if I said there weren't times where I sit and I'm like, I wish I was just that little bit better at finance, or I was that little bit better at, all these things that are just not in my core competencies and things that I just don't enjoy. But, I mean, sitting here and chatting with you and with one of the businesses, we partner with an investment bank. They get numbers to a level that I never will. And I don't
Yeah,
need to be that person to have
that's
all
right.
the answers.
That's right. No, I still resonate with that, right? Because it's once upon a time, it is how can I be the subject matter expert because I need to make my stake, plate my claim, and see my success. And then through my own failure, and it sounds like yours too, you come out the backside realizing, you know what? I want to be the dumbest guy in a room full of smart people. And I know it sounds cliche, but what you're explaining is somebody who lives in finance their entire life, they're probably the better expert at that. And if you can surround yourself around those people without making a fool of yourself in the process, many really good things can occur on the upside.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And it's where
There's
I resonate with you 100% on that.
There's a book by Dan Sullivan called Who, Not How. I don't know if you're
Mm.
familiar with it,
No, I
but
have.
Dan Sullivan started Strategic Coach.
Okay.
And the whole idea is stop thinking about how I'm going to solve this problem. Think about who you know that can achieve this and find a way to build a mutually beneficial arrangement with them. And if you can start with that, your vision can be significantly larger than if you're the one who's always the bottleneck.
Yeah. Well, I think just to clarify what I think you're saying is that folks who might be listening, we're not talking about, I'm not, and I don't think you just mentioned this, but please clarify. We're not talking about bringing people into an ownership relationship with you per se, as much as identifying either a strategic partner, a joint venture, or someone who might end up being an employee or a 1099, or someone who could fill that gap of skills and expertise. That doesn't necessarily mean jumping straight into a partnership or a contractual arrangement. That's what I'm thinking. Are you saying that? Just to be clear.
Yeah, absolutely. So to be very clear on this, when I'm talking about who, not how, it's, and I'm talking about picking people, doesn't mean that the 120 team members that I have right now have a point, whatever I say, I'm bad at numbers, 0.6% stake in the,
How to lie with numbers.
yeah. That's not what I'm insinuating here. What I'm saying is that if you can find the right people and make it make sense, so mutually beneficial might be paying them the salary that they deserve, building the incentive program that makes sense for them. Our recruitment team, if they place a certain number of people, they get a bonus. If they hit a higher number, it doubles. There's all the different levers that you can pull. And I would say, just taking it one step further, making a decision on who your business partner is, who you're giving equity to, and what that looks like, be very careful as to what that looks like. I'm one who likes to give up equity, but it's to people that I know I can work with. It's as important a relationship, and I would say in some cases even more so than the person that you're going to marry and spend the rest of your life with, because you spend so many of your waking hours working with people that have ownership inside of the thing that you guys are building together. And if you don't get that relationship right, and that's a lot of work to get that right, if you don't get that right, then it's literally the biggest disaster you could probably ever imagine.
Yeah, the mindset, the blowout, the potential financial risks, the jeopardy to the business. There's so many things. And the reason I address it is because so many times people listen to these podcasts or talk about building a business, et cetera. And many times they think, well, how do I get someone else to leverage it? How do I get someone else to do it? How do I just get the done for you automation nonsense? And how do I keep myself from doing the work? And what you and I have both walked through and what you're talking about today is putting in the work so that you actually know who you are, so that you know when you bring someone else into a position with you, that you build a trust relationship with them and walk before you actually run and put them in your business. It can be very detrimental. And I know it's not what everybody wants to hear, because we're all about passive income and minimal hours and what do I do for one, hour a day to make 7 figures a year. And it's like there's so much of that nonsense in the world just trying to sell you something. But I think the object here is to make sure that, we're understanding what you're saying. And I appreciate it very much. It's about building something of value, finding people who can build a value, and then allowing them a runway to go be themselves, to be successful in what they do as best as possible.
Yeah, spot on. And just to be totally open about it as well, like that journey that I was telling you in my steps into the Amazon game, I got massively burnt. Like I walked away from a business that I owned, double-digit percentage equity in, that ultimately sold for, $5 million. And I saw none of that upside because I picked the wrong people, or I picked the wrong person as a partner. And so, on the back of that experience and spending a year or so actually building that, and sure, most important stepping stone of my career at that point in time, and something that has set the tone for the rest of my life and how I choose to live it. But, you've got to be really careful. And so I committed to, if I'm going to have someone as a business partner, if someone's going to own equity in the company, it's someone that I fundamentally agree with at their core from an actual like esoteric, like to the core, we are aligned in our values. It's not just about like, does this financially make sense? And can we both do, you got to think about what do the bad times look like, and can we weather this storm together? And is this person going to be a good person ultimately?
Yeah. It's the mantra I try to live my life by. I tell everybody who's willing to listen about fun, people, and profit, right? I mean, I have to have fun at what I'm doing. And by fun, it can't just be me having fun. I need to have fun with the people that I'm employed or around, or in joint ventures, or that are just working within my business, or even my clients. And then that will lead to profit, not just financial profit, but personal, spiritual, maybe physical, and then financial profit, kind of the last of those profitable bullet points. And if I can live by that mantra, then you will realize you've got to give everybody their space and time and find some fun and make a fun environment for them to live in. And it sounds like you've done something really well by that. And we've all had those unfortunate stories of partners who shifted things and destroyed things. And, you look at them and you're like, well, why couldn't we just get along? Like, you're going to miss out on so much when you just, because of what's happening. And you usually get to be put in the villain seat. Unfortunately, it looks like you're the villain. But as you're progressing and you've built this and you're growing, tell us a little bit about your infrastructure and current businesses and kind of what this year, 2023, is going forward for you looks like.
Yeah. So on the back of, those less than experiences and on this bumpy road to get here, and I think again for all entrepreneurs, like it's not sunshine and rainbows 100% of the time. One of the things that people fail to realize when they make, the entrepreneurial leap is that it is not this beautiful, picturesque experience the whole time, and there will be challenges and you go through it. You've got no one to pick yourself, you've got to pick yourself up and you've got to learn from your mistakes and make good decisions. So on the back of that experience, what I did take from it was what I realized we'd created and what actually grew that business. And that was we'd built effectively an ability to grow out agencies or build out agencies that can support e-commerce businesses with talent from the Philippines that was comparable to anywhere in the world. I'd come from 10 years of advertising, working for Sony and MasterCard, Mercedes-Benz, Medtronic, and was able to stand up a team that I would argue would rival any of the agencies that I'd worked with historically. And so we brought that offering to market. And so that's Multiply Me. That's an executive search and HR function into the Philippines. We've got about 450 people on payroll inside of that business, working inside of other businesses. And that's the core to Multiply Me. We have another business that we stood up about a year after that called Escala, which is a process improvement management consultancy. So much like McKinsey, Ernst & Young, Accenture, Deloitte, you name the management consultancy, we've built it on a micro scale. So we've got 35 management consultants. Most come from a process improvement background, systemizing e-commerce businesses for scale. So that's agencies and e-commerce businesses working with a lot of the aggregators and larger D2C brands. And then the last business is a joint venture with Global Wired Advisors, an investment bank in the e-commerce space, and Sellers Funding, who are a non-dilutive capital lender, growth capital lender for e-commerce businesses. And, been around for about 7 or 8 years now and have, pretty considerable books, but also a pretty solid name in the space. So we've stood up together as a joint venture, Southcol. That's a $50 million facility where we're investing in e-commerce businesses to grow them to exit over a 2-year period, where we build the roadmap, we give you access to our management consultants, and ultimately the goal here is to have you actually exit at a material meaning, especially in this market right now, which we haven't gotten into these topics, but it's not the best time to be selling businesses necessarily right now with some of the multiples that are flying around.
So in terms of the buyer or in terms of the seller? Because for the seller, it might not be a bad thing. For the buyer, it's probably not the best time unless you got really strong negotiating skills or an off-market opportunity, which can happen through relationships. But it certainly isn't going to happen in the straight brokering world not right now. Is that what you're referring to?
Yes, exactly. It's tough to get deals done at the minute for sure.
Yeah, there is though, I think, an opportunity at certain buyer classes or levels of a business structure or even EBITDA to potentially acquire some companies that I think can be slingshot pretty well. But it depends upon what level you're buying at and what the investment fund requires you to manage and obviously keep up over the year. It's very different. We're standing up a fund this year to go out and acquire a certain level of EBITDA, but we're looking for a specific kind of business and upside potential. And obviously doing it on the back end of the conversations and relationships, not on the front end brokering deals. So getting them off market if at all possible. But there's opportunity everywhere. Sometimes it's a little harder to find. I'm certainly not buying real estate right now. That's for sure.
Yes. I think it's you and everyone else, right?
You and me? Okay, I just want to make sure I wasn't alone in all that. Yeah, that's kind of an opportunity you might want to wait on just a little bit. And even purchasing cars, you might want to wait on that just a little bit. But look, man, this is some great stuff. And I'd love to have you come back on and dig into this even deeper because I think we could talk for an hour about the rest of this. What should we leave on this episode of parting words of wisdom? This is anybody's listening, maybe the, good advice, bad advice, things people should think about as they're listening to this.
We spoke a lot about sort of that entrepreneurial journey and the fact that it's not necessarily all sunshine and rainbows. And I'd say, don't let that be a deterrent. If this is something that you're passionate about, just lean into it and accept that it's going to be rocky, it's going to be bumpy, but I'd say the learning experience that I've had in the last 5 or 6 years into going off on my own and taking that leap, while I'm in a seat of discomfort a lot of the time, the growth opportunity from a personal and professional development standpoint, like it's been 10 times anything that I'd ever experienced. I was maybe leveraging 5% of my potential working for other people. So I'd just say, if you're going through it, don't let anything I've said scare you, deter you. It is a huge opportunity for you to really be the best version of yourself if you take it with both hands.
Wise words of wisdom, my friend. Thank you for so much for sharing that with us.
Thanks for having me.